Under the burning sun of the Sonoran Desert, the wind carries a sound that doesn't belong to the silence, a long, trembling howl. It echoes through miles of steel fencing, rippling across sand and shadows. A mother wolf stands alone beside the border wall. Her fur is dusted with sand. Her ribs show through a thin layer of muscle. She stares through the slats on the other side. Faint cries answer her. They're her pups. Every night she returns to this same spot. Every night she calls. But no matter how far her voice travels, the wall remains unmoved. What happens when a line built by humans becomes a barrier for life itself? Tonight, I'll tell you a story that changed how thousands of people saw this border and the wild creatures it divides. A story of a mother's determination, a biologist's courage, and a movement born from one single howl. So, before we begin, tell me, what would you do if you found a wild animal crying for its family, but a wall stood between them? Because what happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. Her name is Dr. Elena Cruz, a wildlife biologist born in El Paso, Texas, a border child in every sense of the word. Her grandmother used to say, "Mija, the wolves once crossed these mountains, the way we cross towns without fear, without passports." Those words stayed with her. Now at 34, Elena works for Wildlands United, a conservation group studying the last remaining Mexican gray wolves, or lobos. Once roaming freely from central Mexico up to Colorado, they were hunted nearly to extinction by the 1970s. Today, fewer than 200 live in the wild, survivors stitched across two nations, separated by fences, roads, and fear. Each week, Elena drives her dusty white Jeep from Silver City, New Mexico, to the high desert near the border. Her mission to monitor collared wolves, collect data, and ensure that every howl she hears still belongs to the living. At dawn, the desert is breathtaking. Red sand dunes glowing like embers, cactus flowers opening to bees, hawks circling above dry arroyos. But beauty here always walks hand in hand with danger. Temperatures swing from freezing nights to 110-degree afternoons. Rattlesnakes coil beneath rocks, and the wind carries grit sharp enough to sting the eyes. Elena moves carefully through it all, her boots crunching over sun-baked gravel. She adjusts the antenna of her telemetry receiver, scanning for wolf signals, short bursts of static, faint beeps like heartbeats in the wilderness. "Come on, Luna," she whispers. "Talk to me." The name Luna was hers, the alpha female of one of the few remaining cross-border packs. Luna had been fitted with a collar 2 years ago after being relocated from Sonora, Mexico. The collar's signal had gone silent for 3 weeks, until yesterday. Elena knows what that means. Either the wolf's transmitter battery is dying, or something has gone terribly wrong. In this land, both are possible. She radios her assistant Diego, who's stationed a few miles east. Signals back about half a mile north of marker 207. Looks stationary. Copy that he answers. Could be denning behavior. Denning when a mother wolf stays near her pups for weeks. If Luna is denning, it's a good sign. But for Elena, a strange chill runs down her spine. The coordinates place Luna right against the border fence. To outsiders, this wall is politics. To her, it's something else entirely, a fracture line in the living world. Through her binoculars, Elena scans the American side, the faint trail of paw prints leading to the fence. On the other side, only sand, wind, and silence. She kneels, running her fingers over the prints. Small, fresh. Not just one set, several. Pups. Her heart tightens. If the pups were born on the Mexican side, and Luna is trapped here, the family is divided. For wolves, that means death. She calls Diego again. "We've got tracks. Multiple. I think she's separated from her litter." "You're sure?" "Positive." They set up a motion-sensing camera along the fence, and retreat to a nearby ridge, careful not to disturb the area. As the sun drops, desert shadows stretch like fingers across the sand. Coyotes begin their chorus in the distance, but the sound Elena waits for is deeper, slower, a wolf's call. It comes at twilight, long, mournful echoing off the steel. Then, faintly, the tiny yips of pups answering from the other side. The camera captures everything. For hours, Elena watches in silence. Luna digs near the base of the wall, pushes her nose through the slats, winds circles, tries again. Each time the pups answer, she grows more frantic. It's not just instinct, it's desperation. Diego murmurs. If that wall wasn't there, she'd be with them by now. Elena nods, unable to look away. They call it the border, she says softly. But for her, it's just a prison. The next morning begins with the hum of insects and the dry crackle of heat returning to the land. Dr. Elena Cruz checks the motion camera's memory card, her fingers trembling slightly as the screen lights up. There, frame after frame, the mother wolf pacing against the border, her paws carving tracks into the sand. But one clip stands out. At 3:12 a.m., Luna presses her muzzle through the steel slats. From the other side, a tiny paw reaches back, a pup trying to touch her. They can't. The gap is too narrow. Elena exhales sharply, the image burning into her mind. "We have to do something," she whispers. In wildlife, science observation is sacred. They're taught not to interfere, only to record. But this isn't just research anymore, it's a mother calling for her children. Elena's radio crackles. "You seeing this?" Diego asks from the ridge. "Yeah," she answers quietly. I think she's giving up." Luna lies down beside the wall, ears flattened, her body trembling with exhaustion. Hours pass. The desert changes color. Blue, dawn to gold, heat to gray dusk. But she doesn't move far. She's waiting. Elena and Diego set up camp a few hundred meters away, rotating night shifts. Each evening, Luna rises, howls, digs, and lies down again. Her voice becomes weaker with each passing night. The data logs fill up with location points, timestamps, coordinates, but to Elena, they read like pages from a tragedy. On the fourth night, something changes. Luna stops calling. Elena panics, scanning the desert with thermal lenses. Nothing. Then, a flicker of movement near the fence. Luna's figure appears limping. Her left paw is bleeding, caught earlier in barbed wire. She drags a piece of meat toward the wall, the remains of a rabbit. She drops it, noses it forward, trying to push it through the gap. The meat slides only a few inches. She tries again. It's useless, but she keeps trying. She's feeding them through the fence, Diego says, his voice breaking. Even now, she hasn't stopped being their mother. Elena feels something inside her shift. This is the moment that will change everything. Back at camp, she opens her notebook, writing in block letters. Behavioral response to physical separation, emotional distress evident. But in the margins, she writes something else. Something not for science. How can we stand by and let this happen? The desert answers only with silence. At 2:47 a.m., Luna rises again. She circles, lifts her head, and howls louder than before. This time, multiple smaller howls answer her, faint but determined. Elena watches through night vision as Luna presses both front paws against the steel claws, scraping the metal. Tiny shapes appear on the other side. The pups have come closer than ever before. Then suddenly, movement. A patrol vehicle approaches from the U.S. side. Its headlights cut through the darkness like knives. Luna freezes. Elena grabs her radio. Border Patrol unit approaching from west. Stop. There's wildlife in the area. But it's too late. The vehicle's spotlight sweeps across the sand, blinding the wolf. Luna bolts into the brush, limping, vanishing into black. The pup's cries echo faintly, then fade. That night, Elena can't sleep. She replays the footage again and again, frame by frame, the paw through the metal, the howl, the headlights, the silence after. In that moment, the mission changes. She's no longer just documenting. She's fighting for something larger, a chance to reconnect two worlds that were never meant to be torn apart. "If I can prove that this wall kills connectivity," she says softly to Diego, "maybe they'll let us open a corridor. And if they don't, then at least the world will see what it costs." Day 5 begins with heat already pressing down like a hand. The air tastes of metal and dust. Dr. Elena Cruz pours a ribbon of water into the sand and watches it vanish, a reminder that here everything is thirsty. Everything is temporary. Luna returns before sunrise. She moves like a shadow with a limp left forepaw held high for a few steps, then set down carefully tender as if the earth itself could bruise her. She noses the base of the fence and whines. On the opposite side, one pup answers thin and high. The others are quiet. Elena writes the fact without letting the meaning in. She and Diego work from distance. No calls, no whistles, no food left where a wolf could associate humans with comfort. This is a line they cannot cross. But there are other lines they can. They shift trail cameras to better angles, mark wind direction, chart prey movements on both sides of the wall. They map the narrow arroyos that funnel animals toward the fence, natural paths turned dead ends. At mid-morning, a dust devil unspools across the flats. It rises like smoke and rips the campsite, scattering notes. Elena chases a page that somersaults toward the fence, slaps it to the ground with her palm, and looks up through the slats. For a heartbeat, she is eye to eye with a pup, yellow-brown irises in a face too thin for its age. The pup sniffs, sneezes at the grit, and vanishes into chaparral. The wall swallows the moment. They follow the data. Thermal hits tell them the pups stay within a few hundred yards of a seep, a shallow water pocket fed by a fractured pipe on the Mexican side. Coyotes have discovered it too. Paw prints scribble the shoreline like signatures. Elena's mind runs probabilities. Predation, risk, dehydration, curves the physics of heat loss in bodies this small. She imagines equations as if mathematics could bridge steel. By afternoon, Luna has hunted. She drags what's left of a jackrabbit to the fence and wedges meat into the widest gap. Her claws scrape paint. Flakes fall like ash. The meat sticks. She tries again. It drops. On the third attempt, it slides through. Luna presses her muzzle into the slats and exhales, and somewhere beyond the wall, little bodies shuffle forward. A soft chorusing of yips answers. It sounds like gratitude. It sounds like grief. Elena radios Diego. She's provisioning through the barrier again. Copy, recording timecode. If she's feeding consistently, we can model cost of separation calories expended versus transferred. Cost. Elena repeats not as a scientist, but as a daughter and granddaughter who grew up on stories about animals crossing mountains the way families cross towns. We're already counting it. The day drags. Border Patrol swings by slower this time, windows down, a pair of agents craning to see what the scientists see in the emptiness. Elena steps clear of the cameras, holds up permits, points to the equipment. One agent, sun-creased eyes a polite nod, asks if the wolf is dangerous. She's tired, Elena says. Tired animals are complicated. Animals aren't the only complicated thing out here, he answers. But he keeps the spotlight off when he leaves. Just before twilight, Luna tests the base again. She paws and paws until the wound on her foreleg opens a dark ribbon soaking into lighter fur. She licks it, resumes digging, dops, tips her head back, and sings. It's not the long broadcast call of a wolf locating her pack. It's shorter, hoarser an answer, trying not to sound like a question. Elena, without planning to, sings back in a whisper of breath. Not words, not a sound the wolf could hear. A reflex, a prayer. Night drops like a curtain. The desert cools fast, the heat rushing upward to leave the ground defenseless. Elena and Diego take turns with the thermal scope. A pair of kit foxes trot through the frame quicksilver and mischief, then a mule deer ribs like shutters. When the pups appear, they move with that clumsy confidence young animals carry, sure the world will catch them if they fall. One stumbles, rights itself, noses the fence, where Luna's scent pools in the still air. 3. Diego counts. I thought we had 4. Could be bedded, Elena says too quickly. She writes 3 visible and leaves room for hope to make a liar out of ink. At 1:10 a.m., a freight train moans somewhere north. The vibrations travel like a second heartbeat underfoot. Luna startles, then settles, resting her cheek against the slats as if steel could conduct warmth. The pups mirror her on the far side, tiny forepaws pressed into dust. The camera records 4 bodies after all, the 4th late to arrive, bigger than the others, carrying a stick like a trophy. Elena laughs, choked and grateful, and wipes her eyes with the heel of her hand. She notes 4 confirmed and draws a star. The bond is learning the wall. The family invents a ritual. Luna brings food when she can, lies with the fence between them when she can't, and sings when neither is possible. The pups learn her voice like a map. They respond in phrases matching pitch, turning language back into instinct. The barrier makes them multilingual in loss. On the 6th morning, the limp worsens. The cut across Luna's paw is swollen edges hot with infection. The calculus shifts. An injured hunter is a hungry family. Elena calls Dr. Ames a permitted wildlife veterinarian and describes the presentation, depth, color, gait, asymmetry, frequency of ground contact. Ames asks for footage, then asks the hardest question. Can you immobilize? No. Elena says immediate, not with the litter split. She has to keep scent linking. If we move her, we might sever the thread. You can treat in place if she presents within 50 meters and you have line of sight. Long pole topical, minimal stress. Copy. They wait with the pole. Hours. A wind shift gives them a corridor. The scent of the scientists will blow away from the fence. When Luna approaches to deliver meat, Elena slides from behind the blind, a slow crescent through creosote. The wolf clocks the movement, a head tilt, ears pivoted. Elena lowers her eyes just enough to be unthreatening without being unfamiliar. Distance 8 meters, 7. Luna bares teeth, not as promise, but as boundary. I see you, Elena whispers, though words don't matter. I know the line. She extends the pole. A gentle tap at the fur margin, antiseptic along the wound, a sting of clean pain. Luna jerks, growls once, and holds. The trust is not trust at all. It is triage performed at the border of 2 nations and 3 languages, human wolf and metal. Elena completes the pass, withdraws and backs away until shrub swallows her. That night, Luna moves easier, not well, better. The world, offended by balance, answers with a storm. A wall of dust walks in from the west ochre sky, static in the hair grit, finding teeth cameras. The first gust flips a tripod. Elena and Diego sprint. One saves the lens, the other shields the solar pack. The air tastes coppery. Visibility drops to 30 feet. Somewhere beyond the curtain, A pup yips, then coughs. Elena's chest tightens. She knows the mortality curve for juveniles in storms that last more than 2 hours. She also knows she cannot cross that fence, even if a path opened and a hand reached through. They hold their ground and their rules. When the storm breaks, the desert looks rearranged dunes, shifted tracks, erased a new topography written over the old, like a palimpsest. The seep on the Mexican side is silted. The coyotes have already repatterned. Elena and Diego reset every camera sweep dust, from housings replace, batteries, rebuild data, where the wind made a liar of it. Dawn comes pale and uncertain. Luna is late. Elena listens for the howl and hears only the ache of after-storm silence. Minutes lengthen. A hawk writes circles overhead, confused by the lack of thermals. Elena reaches for the scope, again, turns, and there she is, Luna emerging from a notch in the fence. Elena hadn't mapped, not a gate, not a sanctioned passage. A buckled section where floodwater undermined footing months ago high enough to crawl under if you are desperate, low enough to shred a shoulder if you are wrong. Luna is mud-streaked and shaking. Her chest heaves. Behind her, nothing. She turns to the fence and whines, trots along the line, doubles back to the notch, licks the ground and pushes her muzzle into the dark as if she could pull the other side through. No pups follow. "Did they make it?" Diego asks too loud. Elena holds up a hand. "Wait." A small shape appears, then another. Each pup bellies low and slides beneath the bend. The second catches its flank and squeals. Luna whirls, mouths gently at the hip, frees it, and noses it forward. The third hesitates, backs out, tries again. The fourth, the stick carrier jams, completely pause, flailing dust, plume rising. Elena's body is already moving, before her mind 2 steps toward the fence, before the part of her trained to stop says, "Stop." She freezes, palms open, a statue of restraint. Luna does not need her. The mother drops to the ground, aligns her jaws like a craftsman fitting wood, and takes the bent rim of mesh in her teeth. She doesn't pull. She levers a controlled torque, born of experience and failure, and the physics of mouths. Metal complains. The pup kicks, finds purchase, and slides into its mother's world. For a breathless second, all 4 pups cluster at Luna's legs, a punctuation of relief. Then, reality reasserts rules, sirens engines, men who drive along lines to enforce the idea of lines. The same patrol unit crests the ridge, decent speed dust comet tailing. Elena stands where she is, both hands raised, permits visible. Diego angles his body between approaching tires and the family without ever stepping closer than the protocols allow. The vehicle slows. The agent with sun-creased eyes looks at the wolves, then at the scientists, then at the breach. His jaw works like a man choosing between orders and options. He kills the siren. He keeps rolling slow past the scene and down into the wash, as if he didn't see what he saw, as if the desert were just desert again. Night finds them lighter than the air. Luna nurses at last. The pups' tails helicopter with greed and relief. Elena documents through a lens that wobbles for reasons she doesn't bother to fix. She writes, "Reunion behavior provisional, not secured." She underlines, "not secured," twice. The wall is still a wall. The notch is temporary. Flood crews will fix it in a week, maybe 2. But the data has changed category from tragedy to precedent. Now we can argue Diego says eyes on the family, not just for one wolf, for gates. Corridors, Elena corrects softly. For the future. She emails the sequence to council and to the NGO's policy team, attaches coordinates, timestamps, temperature, wind speed, the names of plants that held the sand in place until it didn't. She includes a single sentence outside the protocol fields. A mother moved a fence with her mouth. What can we move with our hands? Somewhere near midnight, Luna lifts her head and sings, but it's different now, not a question, not a searchlight. It is a low ribbon of sound that wraps the pups and the scientists and the fence itself in a circle the law can't quite draw. Elena listens, neck prickling, and realizes that Bond can survive a line, but only until the line hardens again. The footage is proof and a clock. Tomorrow, the campaign begins. The footage travels faster than wind. Within 48 hours, clips from Elena's cameras spread across conservation networks, first regional, then national, then global. A wolf family divided by a border and reunited through persistence, not politics, not technology, just instinct. Someone on social media names it the howl that crossed nations. By the end of the week, Nature Has No Borders trends across Twitter and Instagram. News anchors quote Elena's field note line. A mother moved a fence with her mouth. What can we move with our hands? The world for a rare moment listens. For Elena, the fame is noise. She doesn't want followers, she wants gates. She spends nights drafting proposals, merging biology with bureaucracy diagrams, showing migration corridors, wolf ranges overlapping border infrastructure cost, analyses proving ecological gates cheaper than wildlife loss. Diego handles logistics. Her inbox handles the world. Hundreds of messages arrive. Scientists, activists, ranchers, students. Most say the same thing. Tell us what to do. Then come the threats. Online comments calling her unpatriotic, borderless, naive. But among the noise is one message that changes everything, an email from Congresswoman Leah Ortega, representing Southern Arizona. I've seen your footage. Meet me in Tucson. I want to help. They meet in a quiet coffee shop near the university. Elena arrives with a folder thick enough to be a manifesto. Ortega listens patient, her fingers tracing the photo of Luna and her pups through the fence. You're telling me, she says slowly, that a 6-foot ecological gate could restore migration for dozens of species, wolves, jaguars, even pronghorn. Yes, Elena answers. One small opening could reconnect an entire ecosystem, and all we need is permission and courage. Within months, the motion reaches Congress. It is dismissed by some, debated by others, and defended by those who still believe compassion can coexist with control. The opposition is loud. We can't weaken the wall. It's a security risk. It's just wolves. But footage doesn't argue. It haunts. Elena's cameras had recorded everything: the pups scraping under the bent mesh, the patrol car slowing, the unspoken decision of one man choosing silence over authority. It plays on national television. And for once, silence wins. 6 months later, approval comes through. A pilot corridor, Ecological Gate E01, authorized for installation in the Arizona-Sonora sector, monitored by both nations' wildlife services. The day the welders arrive, the desert hums with heat and anticipation. Elena and Diego stand at the site where Luna once dug, where the wall still bears faint scratches and flecks of fur. A crew cuts a clean rectangle through the steel, 6 feet wide, 4 feet high. Behind the sparks, the landscape opens like a wound, learning how to heal. Looks small, Diego murmurs. So did she, Elena replies. They install motion-triggered cameras, solar sensors, and scent markers to track crossings. For weeks, the gate remains quiet. Animals are cautious. Walls have memories too. Then one night, the lens catches movement. A gray blur approaches, hesitates, sniffs the opening. She steps through. Luna. The footage shows her stopping halfway, scenting the air as if testing the truth. Then a second shape emerges, a grown pup, one of her litter, now old enough to walk beside her. They cross together, side by side. The next morning, Elena reviews the footage hand over her mouth. It's the same spot, the same camera angle as the old video, but this time there's no fence between them. News outlets erupt again, but this time the narrative is different. Not controversy. Hope. Headlines read, "Mother Wolf returns, first cross-border passage, recorded." Nature reclaims, what politics divided. Elena's inbox fills once more, this time with photos of schoolchildren holding handmade signs, "Let animals cross too." A rancher from Texas writes, "I used to think wolves were trouble. Now I think we are. But the moment is not triumph. It is balance restored, however fragile. The gate is still experimental. The policies still temporary. The funding still uncertain. Yet the desert feels different, as if breathing again." One evening, Elena returns to the site alone. The gate glows copper in the dying sun. She kneels and traces the edges of the metal, still warm from the day. "You did this," she says quietly, to no one in particular, to Luna, to her grandmother, to every creature that never saw this side of freedom. A soft wind answers, carrying a distant familiar sound. The layered howls of a pack calling across both countries, without translation, without permission. For a few weeks, the desert was quiet, too quiet for a story that had already crossed oceans. Then came the noise. News outlets divided the tale into sides again: security versus sympathy, politics versus instinct. Some called it a victory for science. Others called it a hole in the wall. By the second month, Elena's name was everywhere, pinned to hope and to hate alike. TV panels debated her face without inviting her voice. Headlines split cleanly down the middle. Biologist brings back wolves and controversy. Who guards the gate? The emails that hurt most were not the threats she'd grown used to those. It was the ones from ranchers who once supported her, now afraid. "If wolves start crossing again, my cattle are dead. You scientists don't live with the consequences." Elena wanted to answer every message, to explain that healthy ecosystems protect everyone, that wolves keep deer. Populations in check, reduce crop damage, stabilize land. But online reason travels slower than outrage. So she decided to speak where it still mattered under oath. Congress called a hearing. The chamber was cold, the microphones hotter than the lights. Behind her, rows of photographers aimed their lenses like weapons of record. Elena wore her field jacket anyway, sun-bleached, torn at the cuffs. It smelled faintly of dust and sage. Dr. Cruz, the chairman, began. "You claim that this so-called ecological gate is safe. But how can you guarantee it won't become a breach for smugglers, or worse?" "Sir," she said, "steady wolves don't smuggle anything but their instincts. And unlike people, they can't climb." Laughter rippled, half genuine, half tense. "We're not laughing, Doctor," another congressman said. "This is a national security issue." "So is biodiversity," Elena replied. "Without functioning ecosystems, no border will protect us from collapse." They questioned her for hours about data, about funding, about whether compassion was policy or weakness. When it was over, the chairman leaned back. "You know, Doctor, you've become a symbol. So has she." Elena said, holding up a photograph of Luna. But she didn't ask to be. The hearing ended, but the debate didn't. Across the country, talk shows, podcasts, even classrooms argued about borders and biology. In Arizona, students painted murals of wolves running through open gates. In Washington, lobbyists called it a distraction. Diego watched the coverage and muttered, "Funny, huh? The wolves don't even know they're political." Elena smiled weakly. They just know they're alive. Back at the field site, she finds something waiting for her new tracks at the gate. Not just wolves this time, jaguar pronghorn, even coyote. Life has learned the passage. The corridor works. But she also finds tire marks, patrol jeeps stopping near the gate more frequently now. Officials wary but watching. That night, a drone passes overhead. Its red light blinks like an unblinking eye. Elena looks up at the same sky Luna howls to and whispers, "We opened a door. Now we have to keep it open." Weeks later, she's invited back on camera, this time willingly. The interviewer asks, "What do you say to those who think you care more about wolves than people?" Elena pauses, then answers softly, "I study wolves because I understand people. We both build families. We both fight for space. We both cross lines for love." The clip circulates faster than any headline. Even critics share it not out of agreement, but awe. Still, backlash sharpens. A bill appears proposing temporary closure of all ecological gates for security review. The vote is scheduled for December. Elena's organization scrambles petitions, public letters, celebrity endorsements. But what finally shifts the tide isn't words, it's proof. At 3:42 a.m., one of the motion cameras records a herd of pronghorn antelope using the gate, the first documented cross-border migration in over a decade. The footage shows no human interference, no breach, no damage, only movement. Natural, peaceful. When released to the public, the video garners millions of views in hours. The committee cancels the vote. That morning, Elena stands before the same gate, watching the sun crawl up from the Sonoran horizon. Behind her, the desert still hums with risk and argument. Before her, the path glows clean, free of fear. "We did it," Diego says behind her. For now, she answers, "Until the next wall. We built a line and called it protection." The desert answered with a question. Protection for whom and from what? Wolves don't know. Flags. They know family's watershed at noon, the slope where pups can learn to run without snagging their paws. When we cut the land, we cut those lessons in half. When we open a passage, we stitch them back together. The mother at the center of this story never read a policy brief. She levered metal with her mouth because love is a kind of physics. Her pups learned the shape of return because biology is a kind of memory. And we scientists, ranchers, officers, students, neighbors learned that compassion can be engineered. It looks like a 6-foot opening sensor calibrated, so people are people, and wildlife is wildlife. It looks like fladry lines that flutter harmlessly and keep calves alive. It looks like a patrol car rolling past quietly, because the safest choice is sometimes to let the desert be the desert. This is not a fairy tale. The gates need maintenance. The funding needs votes. Coexistence takes work on Tuesday mornings when no cameras watch. But the outcomes are real: crossings, counted calves, compensated jaguar tracks drying in the sun where no one thought north was possible anymore. A corridor is not charity for animals. It is infrastructure for life, including ours. So here is the ask. If you live near a migration route, support non-lethal tools. If you ranch, tap the compensation and range rider programs that protect both livelihoods and wildlife. If you vote, read the line items that keep pilots running and expand them where the data says yes. If you teach, add a page to your local history about movement older than any map. And wherever you are, learn the names of the beings who share your ground. Names make neighbors. Most of all, keep listening. A howl is only a sound until you understand what it's saying. Then it is a boundary turned into a bridge. The wall will stand where policy decides. The gates will open where courage agrees. Between those facts is the space where we live, where one decision meets another and a mother's path becomes possible again. Subscribe, share, and stay with us as we follow these corridors across seasons and states. The next story begins where this one ends at a threshold at dusk, with the wind threading steel and a family choosing the open path. There is no border in a howl. There is only distance and how we close it. In Washington, the desert lives in Dr. Elena Cruz's pockets. Grains of Sonoran dust shake loose from her field jacket in rooms where carpets smother footsteps and clocks decide the weather. She learns the topography of hearing calendars and hallway alliances moving between offices, with maps rolled under her arm, corridors inside a building for corridors across a continent. Her days fill with translation from biology to budget lines, from telemetry pings to public interest. She testifies without spectacle. She shows a paw print and calls it a data point, a howl and calls it a signal, a gate and calls it infrastructure. Staffers lean forward because the story refuses to be rhetoric. It arrives with timestamps. Meanwhile, the field holds its shape. Diego manages the monitors and the young researchers. He writes night reports that read like postcards. Jaguar seen southbound 213. Pronghorn herd. 19 individuals, clean crossing. Coati tracks at dawn. He keeps the language spare on purpose. The pictures carry the rest. Luna's family becomes a pattern rather than an exception. The juveniles disperse the way wolves do when the math of mouths and territory insists. One moves north into higher pine, another pairs briefly with a male from the Mexican side and returns alone. The bold one tests ranch edges and decides against it after meeting Fladry and a dog with serious opinions. Luna dens before spring. She chooses a slope cut with shade at noon. The corridor learns new names. 2 more ecological gates open, one west, one east, aligned with the ghost routes animals still carry in bone memory. Engineers add rock berms that funnel movement. Biologists add scent posts that whisper safe passage. Border Patrol adds sensors calibrated to ignore the world the gates are built for. The wall, like any structure, becomes a set of choices. At the end of Elena's first DC, winter. A motion camera records what the field team has been waiting for, but refusing to expect small bodies wobbling after a larger shadow. Ears too big, steps too brave, the first footage of Luna's new litter. The pups don't approach the gate yet. They memorize it from a distance the way you memorize a river before you touch it. They'll learn the word threshold later. News of the crossings no longer detonates across feeds. It spreads like groundwater, steady, quiet, essential. Schools in border towns add a page to their local history curriculum about migration that predates borders. A ranch cooperative files a report showing fewer calf losses after adopting non-lethal tools and range riders in the corridor's radius. The compensation program shifts funds from reaction to prevention. A county road crew installs wildlife underpasses where the corridor intersects traffic. Small decisions accrue into geography. One afternoon, cherry blossoms outside, and the desert's stubbornly not here. Elena sits with a senator who hasn't decided what story to believe. She doesn't mention Luna. She mentions numbers, crossings, documented species, count-reduced search and rescue conflicts where animals no longer trap themselves against steel. She mentions costs kept low because the gates repurpose what already exists. She mentions that without gene flow, small populations fold. When she stands, the senator says, almost to himself, "It's hard to argue with a map that moves." When the Transboundary Wildlife Corridors pilot passes committee, it doesn't sound like a miracle. It sounds like a motion, modest, procedural, necessary. The bill doesn't promise to solve anything permanent. It promises to measure what works, and keep it working. In ecology, permanence is a rumor anyway. Spring returns to the border like a slow apology. Ocotillo burn red. Thunderheads pile on far horizons undecided. The corridor breathes wider. Diego texts Elena a frame at 0411, grainy green. Two wolves, shoulder to shoulder, the mother smaller now beside a daughter, taller than memory. The caption is simple. She's teaching. Elena spends a week back home to remember which side of the wind the desert keeps its dust. She sleeps on a cot at the field station, hears night animals rearrange the silence, and wakes with the reflex to check batteries. At dusk, she walks to gate year 1 and sits far enough away to be no one. The wall radiates the day's heat like a tired thing. On the Mexican side, heat lightning writes grammar above distant hills. The first to appear is not a wolf, but a pronghorn yearling, a sliver of speed pausing at the threshold. It steps through, and then, skittish at its own decision, steps back, repeating the experiment until the body believes the mind. A coati slips under with the grace of a practiced border crosser. A barn owl ghosts along the metal and is gone. Then Luna arrives, and whatever Elena had planned to feel changes shape. The wolf is leaner from nursing and stronger from purpose. She stops at the gate the way a musician stops at a note. They've hit 1,000 times attention, not hesitation. One pup wobbles into view, then another, and the third cut from night. The fourth, stubborn from birth, tries to squeeze between slats 10 yards away until Luna circles back to collect him with a low private syllable. All four gather at the threshold, reading mother and weather and probability. The crossing is not dramatic. It is ordinary the way rain is ordinary, necessary, precise, and impossible to watch without thinking about what it means. The family moves as 4 points following 1 point, following an old road. Elena records and doesn't breathe, and then breathes. On her last day before the flight east, Elena drives with Diego along the corridor's length. They stop at the new gates to sign off on adjustments, camera heights, tamper seals, brush clearance. In a wash newly cut by flash flood, they find fresh cat tracks broader than a man's fist. Jaguar headed north. They stand there a long time saying nothing because some news refuses commentary. Back in DC, Elena spends her last hearing of the season describing what a gate remembers. Infrastructure is memory, she says. It teaches behavior. When the behavior is movement, the memory is life. She keeps Luna's photograph face down in her folder and shows only charts because the story no longer needs a hero. It needs a budget. By early fall, the pilot program publishes its first report. The numbers are not a victory lap. They are scaffolding 3 gates and plus documented crossings, 26 species 0, recorded security incidents related to the openings, a measurable uptick in gene flow indicators for Mexican gray wolf subpopulations. The next phase is boring on purpose, maintenance funding, seasonal staffing, interagency protocols. The border learns to live with an asterisk and remains a border. Elena returns to the desert with a suitcase that smells like airplanes. She doesn't walk to the gate that first evening. She sits on the ridge where the team always pretends to disappear and waits for the sound that started all of this. It doesn't come quickly. The desert is not a jukebox. It answers when it decides to be an answer. When the howl finally rises, it carries harmonics she doesn't recognize. Youth layered into memory, new throats learning old roots. She closes her eyes, and for the first time since she left, feels the map move under her without anyone drawing it. She thinks of what remains: fragile budgets, climates, elections, goodwill. She thinks of what remains: stubborn instinct, dawn, the fact that mothers will never steal with their mouths if they must. She stands not for drama, but for posture, and turns toward home the long way, tracking her path by stars. Autumn lowers itself over the desert like a shawl. The light grows softer, the wind less cruel. Nights run longer. In the weeks since Ecological Gate 01 opened, Luna has crossed and recrossed with a steadiness that feels like prayer fulfilled, a route remembered after years of forgetting. Her pups have lengthened into lean juveniles. Their steps carry the confident hesitancy of teenagers testing edges, glancing back. Dr. Elena Cruz has learned to measure days by tracks rather than clocks. She rises before dawn, checks the cameras, plots the crossings on a map that no longer looks like a wound, but a repair stitched carefully through flesh and policy. Each pin tells a story of a decision made by an animal without permission, slips. Each decision feels like a vote cast for tomorrow. Yet balance brings its own weight. Letters keep arriving, some grateful, some furious, some simply afraid. A rancher's calf was taken on the American side last week. The compensation program paid out in 2 days. Fences were reinforced with fladry and guard lights, and range riders added night patrols. Still, the rumor travels farther than the receipt. Wolves are back. Politics hears rumors first. The NGO asks Elena to relocate to DC for a year to be the face of a permanent corridors bill. "We need you here," the director says, kind and insistent. The cameras changed minds. Your testimony can change votes. The salary would triple. The apartment would have walls that keep weather out. The work would be real. Elena stands by the gate that evening, with the phone heavy in her pocket. The sky has gone the color of copper, the long steel teeth of the wall glowing with a beauty that feels like betrayal. On the Mexican side, creosote bushes shiver, releasing that after-rain scent even though it hasn't rained. She imagines the Capitol halls that echo schedules that don't bend days, where the only dust is metaphor. Diego walks up from the truck, hands in his pockets. "You going to tell me you're leaving?" he says, not as question. "I don't know yet. You do. You just haven't said it out loud." He nods toward the horizon. "They don't need us the way Congress does." Elena doesn't answer. In the field, the truth is a tool you use carefully. A shape moves at the edge of vision. Luna steps from the mesquite, deliberate, unhurried. One of her offspring, taller, now darker along the back, fans out to the right, testing wind. Another lingers near the scent post, reading a paragraph left by Pronghorn earlier that day. The fourth hangs close, all legs and uncertainty. Family still, but loosening. Elena watches the mother pause at the threshold. Wolves do not worship gates, they notice them. Luna lifts her head, nostrils working, collects the night's information. She crosses one motion, no ceremony, all purpose. The juveniles follow with small variations, an ecology of personalities, the bold first, the careful circling wide, the clown nearly tripping over his own feet. The last stops beside the steel ears, tilting toward a sound Elena cannot hear. "You remember when they were voices behind a wall," Diego murmurs. "I remember when it was a question whether their voices would continue," she says. The radio crackles a reminder about tomorrow's stakeholder meeting in Tucson. Then the calendar ping for a virtual briefing with a senator's staff. Another ping, DC housing info from the NGO subject line in all caps timeline. The future speaks fluent urgency. The wolves fade into darkness on the American side, then reappear in the infrared feed, bodies glowing like small planets. They weave through chola skirt, awash, hesitate at a scent, then carry on. The path they choose is familiar now, the old ancestral corridor that predates everything human on this ground, and will, if allowed, outlast it. Elena thinks of her grandmother's voice, the stories of Lobos crossing mountains, like towns of families knitted by sound rather than fences. She thinks of hearings and headlines, of the way a single sentence can be misread into something you never meant, of the way Luna's mouth at the fence moved more than steel. DC needs you, Diego says gently. But they don't need you every day, not like this place did. What if leaving means the gates close? Elena asks. What if staying means they never open anywhere else? The desert keeps its counsel. The wind threads the slats with a low metallic hum, an unintentional instrument. In that sound, Elena hears the question she's been circling. Is she a scientist who found a story, or a storyteller who refuses to abandon the science? The answer she suspects is yes. A flicker in the feed. The juveniles have turned back unsettled. A coyote chorus lifts from the south. The youngest wolf skitters, then squares itself ashamed of the startle. Luna returns to him, touches her muzzle to his ear, breath, a private correction only they understand. Then she does something Elena has never recorded. Luna lifts her forepaw, the one that once bled at the fence, and presses it gently into the dust at the mouth of the gate. She holds it there, weight-committed prints, a clear, deliberate track. Then she places a second print beside it, offset, as if leaving a signature rather than a trail. The juveniles watch, puzzling through mother grammar. The bold imitates her and botches it. The careful tries later better. The clown smears the shape and shakes dust from his whiskers, chastened. Elena's throat tightens. It is nothing. It is everything. A lesson written in a script older than law. This is where you pass. This is how you return. This is how you remember. The radio pings again. DC, tomorrow needs a yes, tonight. She finds the word where the fear isn't. I'll go, she says, and the desert does not object. For a year. We get 3 more gates by next winter, or I come home and fight on the dirt again. Diego exhales like a man stepping out from shade. Then we better make a punch list. They talk logistics, who maintains the camera grid, who runs rancher trainings, which grad students can handle telemetry without confusing obsession for care. Elena drafts a message to the community list field, contact transferring temporarily. Protocols, unchanged corridor monitoring, uninterrupted. She deletes the word uninterrupted and types ongoing. Fieldwork respects the possibility of everything breaking. The wolves complete their circuit and return near midnight. They approach the gate from the Mexican side, now slower, as if measuring the night for hidden math. Luna stops at the paired paw marks she left and lowers her head. The juveniles overlap her prints with their own turning signature into chorus. Elena, who has told herself story, is a tool, not a destination. Feels the story choose its ending anyway. It is not triumph, not tragedy. It is a family doing the simplest, hard thing, leaving and returning again and again until the line is theirs as much as anyone's. She steps back from the monitor and walks to the gate. She does not cross. She knows the line. She kneels, palm hovering an inch above Luna's track, not touching, refusing even that small theft of shape. You taught me, she whispers, because prayer and field notes sometimes share a spine. Now, I'll go teach them. A long, low howl unfurls from the darkness, Luna's voice braided now with younger tones. It lifts bends once around the steel and carries on the sound of a map redrawn without ink. Elena closes her eyes and lets it pass through. When it falls to silence, she feels less like someone leaving and more like someone sent. Morning will be a flight and a suit jacket and rooms where the wolves must be explained. Tonight is the border, a woman, and a gate, and the simplest of signatures in dust. When she finally stands, the prints remain sharp and temporary, the way all instructions are. She takes a photograph, not to keep, but to persuade. The juveniles fade south. Luna lingers one heartbeat more, looks toward the ridge where the scientists always try to disappear, and then turns. She does not look back again.